Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sober Stew podcast. My name's Stuart, and you are listening and watching a recovery podcast. Today, I have great pleasure in welcoming William Porter to the podcast, who's going to share his journey into recovery with you. Good afternoon and welcome.
Hello, thanks for inviting me, Stu.
Wicked, thank you very much for coming on. Thank you very much for coming on. I know a little bit about you, William. I've seen a couple of podcasts that you've been on, and I've done a little bit of research. But to be honest with you, I tend not to do too much research because I like the element of surprise. So I like to find out things as we're sitting here talking. I don't want a bit of too much of a history and a background in my brain. So I think for me, the first question I like to ask people is, what was your mindset like as a child? Let's go straight in.
Okay, that's an interesting one. I think I had a fairly normal childhood. I was fairly happy. I always had a bit of social anxiety. So I've got two kids now, and they're 11 and 12. And the 12-year-old, he loves football. If you put him with a group of his kids his own age, he's straight in there, friends, messing around with them, all the rest of it. My younger one's the opposite. He's very much happy playing on his own. Takes him a while to make friends. He usually has small numbers of quite close friends, and I very much see that as more mirroring my childhood. So I wasn't in with the in crowd, as it were. I kind of had like a small group of friends, and I was always fairly happy with a book or just, doing stuff on my own.
So I can definitely relate to not being within the in crowd. I feel like personally, I was always on the outside, on the outskirts, maybe looking in, trying to find my place to fit in. And I feel like I went through life like that, trying to find my place to fit in.
Yeah, I kind of empathise with that quite a lot. I always kind of feel like I don't fit in anywhere particularly. To give an example and a bit of background, I was in the reserve battalion of the Parachute Regiment, so it was
Mhm.
like the TA. So I was in like weekends, evenings, doing that, and it kind of really highlighted it for me because at the time I come out of university and I was trying to get a training contract to qualify as a solicitor. And it felt really weird because when I was in there, I felt like I didn't really belong because
Right.
I was kind of like this middle class, working in the city. But when I was in my job, I didn't feel like I belonged there.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I kind of like wherever I was, I didn't really, didn't really feel like I fitted in particularly well.
I know what you mean exactly. And when I was looking at your profile the other week, when I invited you on, it says it was solicitor and ex paratrooper and author, and I look at that and I think, man, that's like that deviates a little bit, doesn't it? And I thought
Yes,
I've got to speak to this guy
weird
because
mix.
that's it's a bit like me. I mean, I haven't got those titles or those jobs, but I'm that person who didn't fit in to wherever I
Mm.
was, whatever I was doing, and always on the outskirts, and always had different titles as well. So you're training to be a solicitor, but you're doing the TA. How
Yeah.
did that come about?
So when if you want to, I think it's the same these days. This is obviously going back a few years, but when you wanted to be a solicitor, you had to do your course at university and all the rest of it. Then you had to work for 2 years doing a training contract. So you had to get employed as a trainee solicitor before you could qualify. But these training contracts were notoriously hard to come across. So there's loads and loads of people applying for them, and not very many people getting them.
Right.
So I finished at university, and I was working as a paralegal, which basically, I was an office clerk. I was just photocopying. It was really dull work, trying to get a training contract and failing over and over again, and just kind of like not being particularly satisfied with life. And I think it was one Christmas, and I was sort of slumped in front of the TV as you do over Christmas. And an advert for the TA came on, and they're like, like all charging through the woods, and it's like, oh, okay, that looks all right. So so in the new year, I went and had a look around three of the local TA centres, and ended up in the parachute regiment. Well, I honestly, I didn't know. So I'd been to cadets for about a month when I was like, I don't know, 12 years old. And
Right.
I had in mind it was going to be like that, kind of vaguely. And I turned up and they're like all talking about, you got to do P company, which is a selection procedure. And I was like, yeah, but we won't be doing that. We're just a TA. And they're like, no, you're doing everything. And I was like, oh God, I wasn't really expecting this. But another kind of trait I have is that if I start something, it's hard for me to stop doing it.
Yeah.
I don't like letting things go. So I was like, so my mindset then was like, okay, this is not what I signed up for, but I'm here and I'm going to give it a go. It's tough. I probably won't get in. I won't pass it. So I'll give it a go and see where I end up.
That's mad. That is mad. Especially you'd only been in the cadets for a month.
Yeah,
I'm sitting here
about
laughing.
10 years ago. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, okay, I've got a question here then. So, what was your alcohol consumption like during that period?
So I always drank weekends. I was never a
Okay.
daily drinker, and I would always drink to get drunk. That's just what we did, and I had done. I mean, I started drinking when I was 14,
Yeah.
and the purpose of drinking was to go out and get as drunk as you could. And that's what I was doing then. I was always in with a group who we'd go to the pub and we'd stay there and keep drinking. And it always seemed so cutting across the chronology a bit here, but my wife only is one of those people that just has like one or two drinks. And
Mhm.
when we started dating, it was bizarre because like we go to, I don't know, like go to the cinema or something. And then afterwards we were like, right, should we go to the pub? And we go to the pub and have a couple of drinks. And she'd be like, okay, what should we do now? And I was like, what do you mean? Well, we're in the pub. We're staying here now. That's what we do. So that was very much what my drinking pattern was. Friday night go out and get hammered. Saturday
Yeah.
night go out and get hammered. Sober up a bit on Sunday, and then back to work on Monday.
Do you know, you've just reminded me of something because an ex-girlfriend of mine many, many, many years ago, if we was to go shopping on a Saturday afternoon, which wasn't that often because I was normally out on a Saturday afternoon, but if we was to go shopping, I think she used to say to me to try and be kind, should we pop in the pub and have a drink? And I used to say no. And she'd be like, but you love going to the pub. Why don't we go in there? I said, because I'm not going in there for one drink. That was what my
No.
view was. What, and
Yeah.
then go shopping. That ain't going to work. If I
Yeah.
go in there now for one, you might as well leave me there. And that was my mindset at 20, I think it was, around that sort of age. You joined the TA, okay. You had to,
Yeah.
did you finish your solicitor training as well during that period?
So what happened was I got in, I passed P Company and did my wings course. I actually stopped drinking for I think 3 months leading up to P Company because I suddenly realised this is tough and I need to, if I'm going to give it my best shot, I need to stop drinking. So I think that was one of the longest periods I'd ever stopped drinking for. And then I finished that, and then after that I got my training contract, qualified as a solicitor, and then after that got mobilised and sent out to Iraq. So it was kind of that's what happened
Oh,
chronologically.
wow.
So the two things is kind of like going along at the same time. Yeah.
Well, listen, I feel like there's two big points here. The first one is that when you said you stopped drinking for 3 months or so, you must have realised then, or you must have known that your drinking was an issue for you to stop it completely for 3 months.
So I knew it interfered with fitness. That's what I
Right.
knew because I knew if I woke up with a hangover, I wasn't going for a run, and if I
Okay.
did go for a run, it wasn't going to be as fast or as good as it would have been had I not. So I knew at that point. So my mindset at that point is I go out and I get hammered every weekend. That's what most people do. It's not a problem. I don't think I even thought of this. It didn't even cross my mind, but that was obviously what was going on underneath. But I've got this very tough physical test coming up and I need to train for it. And I can't be wiping out weekends not doing training. So I'm going to stop for a bit, get as fit as I can, and so that was that.
And how did you feel when you stopped drinking? Was you cool? Was it never an issue? Was it never an obsessive thought in your mind?
So I'm going back now. This is 2000, so it's like
Right.
23 years ago. So remembering my mindset, I think, is a bit difficult. But I knew I wasn't stopping for good.
Right.
And I think that was the key difference for me. There's a big, big difference stopping for a set period of time
Mhm.
to know that you're going to go back to it, to stopping forever and knowing you're never going to go back to it. Because I think it makes it so much easier because you almost like just, okay, I can go out and live and have fun again, but just not for this few months.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like my mindset. And I, to be honest, I reckon I probably didn't go out. Thinking back on it, I don't remember going out with friends and having a Coke or water or anything. I think I must have just stopped going out and
Stop going
just
out.
concentrated. Yeah, completely. Which again is, that kind of mindset thing. It's like, okay, I'm gonna, because I think my mindset at the time is I need alcohol to socialize. If I'm
Yeah.
going out with my mates, I have to drink, otherwise what is there? There's no point. So I'm not drinking, so I won't go out with them.
Yeah, and you protect yourself then by sitting at home by yourself, because if you do
Yeah,
go out, you're putting yourself in danger, aren't you?
yeah, and you're not. I mean, I see people do this when they do like dry January, and they're like, there's a chap at work. He's like, oh, and you hear this conversation. I have to bite my tongue, but someone will say to him, "Do you want to go out for a drink tonight?" He's like, "No, I'm doing dry January," and I think, well, fair enough, but the point is to try and live your life without alcohol. And you don't live your life without alcohol by hiding away and not living your life. You're
No,
just
you
kind of
don't.
kicking the can down the street, aren't you?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and I
I
think that
agree.
was the big difference. And I think that's why it was probably fine for me to do it, because I had this specific goal. And literally, I remember coming back from doing P Company, getting to the barracks, getting out the car park and drinking the second my feet hit the concrete.
Straight
So I went
away.
straight back. Yeah, straight back into it. Yeah.
So that is an obsessive thought, then, isn't it? That was in your mind.
Yeah, I suppose everyone was, though. I mean, it was a pass or fail. It was a big event, and as soon as everyone was off, they were drinking. I think it's still the case now, but certainly 25 years ago, there's a big drinking culture in the
Right.
army, massive. So again, it wasn't like I didn't look at it then like, oh God, I've got this terrible problem because as soon as I've stopped, it was more like, this is my reward. I've spent 3 months off the drink. I've trained hard. I've passed. I've got my maroon beret. I'm going to celebrate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You've made me think of something though. Do you think, you say that it's a big part of the community is alcohol consumption? Do you think that's because that unit, that service, that attracts a certain kind of mindseted person?
Yeah, I think there's a. I remember reading this thing about. Do you remember Oliver Reed? You heard of Oliver Reed?
Yeah.
Actor, big,
Yep.
heavy drinker,
Heavy,
macho.
heavy. Yep.
He used to refer to his drinking sessions as tests of strength.
Hmm.
So, and there's this big mindset that like you're not a man if you can't go and get really hammered. And
Yeah.
I remember, so this is after I passed and got into the regiment. It was one weekend we were away, and we had a march and shoot the next day. So this is a 10-mile forced march with weight on, so full military kit, and at the end of it, a shooting competition. And it was like at dawn the next day, and a big group of them were going out to the pub that night. And I said, I'm not going to the pub. And the sergeant like turned around and was like, why aren't you going to the pub? And I'm like, we've got to march and shoot the next day. And he was like, you fucking idiot. You should
Yeah.
not be in the reg if you cannot go out, get hammered and get up 2 hours late. So it was almost
Really?
like you're not a proper soldier if you can't go and get massively hammered and then jump up and do a march and shoot the next day.
Did you go?
So no, I didn't know.
Well,
No,
I like that.
yeah.
That's mad. That is mad. So that is the culture. That was the culture. Potentially, still is the culture now.
Yeah, I was talking to someone about this who was, I think he was still in or he'd left just recently. And I was kind of telling him this, and he said, no, it's changed a bit now. There's still a big drinking culture, but it's not, they're a bit more savvy, because I think that, a few people have actually died doing these, what they call TABs, tactical advance to battle, which is basically
Really?
a run in full kit when they've been, drunk too much the night before, gone and done that and completely piled in. So I think they're becoming a bit more attuned to it. And I think attitudes to alcohol are changing a bit now as well. So I think that real macho drinking culture is probably, shifting slightly, although very slowly, I would guess.
Slowly, yeah. And you're right. The attitude to alcohol and the drinking culture is changing. It's changing. I suppose it depends where you look. Where I look, it looks like it's changing quite a lot. But then when I talk to other people who don't look where I look, for example, on various social medias, they don't really
Yeah.
see it. So
Mm.
it does depend. There was another question. You said when you passed, you was posted to Iraq literally straight away.
No. So I passed P Company and my wings course in 2000, and Iraq was 2005. So it was a
Okay,
few years down the line.
right.
Yeah.
And how did you? And Okay, so how did you find out? That's a bit of a strange question, but how did you deal with that? How did you cope?
So the army for me, it was always I always felt, like when I described where I turned up and I didn't really know
Yeah.
what to expect, and it was like, oh, I didn't quite sign up for this. That was like a reoccurring thing for my whole 6 years, because I sort of did that, and then it was like, okay, so your next step is your wings course. So you go off to Bryce Norton for 2 weeks parachuting, and I remember like traveling to Bryce Norton thinking, fuck, I'm going to be jumping out of a plane. And you keep getting these odd moments where you stop and you think it's almost like you're playing dares with your friends, and it suddenly got out of hand.
Yeah.
And I kept having that as a reoccurring thing, and that was kind of a good and bad point of the army, because if you're prepared to do stuff, they will give you as many opportunities as you want. Um, so I kept thinking, this is kind of a unique experience. I'm going to keep going for stuff when it comes up. But I kept getting these like times where I would just stop and think, oh God, this is getting out of hand. And going out to Iraq was one of them. I
I
remember,
bet.
I think we flew out from Bryce Norton, and of course had been drinking a lot the day before, and the plane was delayed. And I remember just sitting in the airport thinking, how has this happened? What on
What are
earth
you
am I
doing?
playing?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
What are
yeah,
you
exactly.
doing? So
Yeah,
that anxiety is kicking in from the session the day before.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm just putting myself into your shoes, and I would be sitting there thinking, "What the fuck am I doing?"
yeah, very much so. It
Fear,
was
fear
really
would have
kind of
been,
like, yeah,
yeah.
it was horrendous. Yeah. And I remember, so we flew out there. I was feeling awful the whole time. We hit the ground out there. I got tasked, because obviously just a private soldier, I got tasked with unloading the plane and doing the baggage handling thing. So I was doing that in this dilapidated, half bombed out airport in Iraq. Then we collected our kit, and then we had a helicopter take us to Shiba Log Base, which is where we were staying. So I got on the helicopter, and it was like getting towards nighttime. Then we'd been traveling like virtually all day.
Right.
Got on this helicopter, and it was like low flying, and they were firing flares out, and there's a gunner at the back with this machine gun. And that was the first time the whole day I thought, actually, this could be quite cool. This is going to be an experience. That was, I think that was the first
Really?
positive thought I had all day, right at the
Just
end
you
of the
got a bit of
day.
excitement from that.
Yeah, yeah. It's because again, with the army, it's that weird mix of thinking, "Oh God, I'm in too deep here," and then
Mhm.
thinking, "Actually, this is pretty amazing what you're doing." So it was, yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty powerful, to be fair. That is powerful.
yeah,
How
yeah.
long was you there for?
So it was 6 months. So I was out there for
Right.
6 months. Everyone got 2 weeks leave dotted in the middle somewhere. And coincidentally, mine was over Christmas. So I got home for Christmas. But yeah, so I
Nice.
was 6 months out there. I can't remember if it's 2 weeks or one. I think it was 2 weeks we got, yeah, in the middle of the tour.
And was you sober for that 6 months?
Apart from the 2 weeks I was
Apart
back.
from the 2
Yeah,
weeks
yeah,
you was
yeah.
back? So
Yeah.
did you drink every day when you was back, or just,
Yeah,
here and
because it
there?
was Christmas as well. This is the weird thing. Like when I said I only ever drank at weekends, the reason I only ever drank at weekends is because the job I do, I have to use my brain for it. And I learnt very early on I couldn't do it if I was hungover. I just couldn't get my head round, quite complicated things you've got to be thinking about. So although I didn't drink during the week, when I wasn't working, I would drink all the time. So if I was on holiday or something, and what happened was, before I went out to Iraq, you had to do 2 months build up training. So they taught you like theatre specific operations for desert warfare, blah, blah, blah. So you go off to, I don't know, like Kukudbury military base for a week and do live firing, and then you'd have a few days off, and then you'd do so it was like 2 months build up training, but you weren't
Mm,
training all the time. You do like a week or so here and then have a few days off. And when I wasn't training, I was drinking.
right.
Okay. And so one of these weekends, so I had a few days clear, and I live in London. My sister used to live down on the south coast, and we used to go down and visit her. So I had like a bit of time off. So I went down and visited her. And what I used to do, I used to stop on the way at an off license and just load the car up with booze and then go down and see her. And we just get absolutely hammered for the weekend, her, me, and her husband. And whenever I drank, I always used to wake up really early, but they were drinkers who would sleep in. So I woke up on like the Saturday morning, and I was in bits because, again, it really hit me. I was like really hungover. I had all that anxiety from the hangover, all the worry about going out there. And I was literally just pacing up and down thinking, fuck, what have I
Yeah.
done to myself? And I remember walking into, I didn't even want a drink. I was just like, just wanted something. And I opened the
Yeah.
fridge and there was like a load of Strongbow Super in there from the night before. And I took a can out. Again, I wasn't like craving a drink. It was just like, I just want something to take the edge off. And I had this can of Strongbow Super, and I went from being like afraid and miserable and thinking, oh my God, what have I done? To
Mhm.
thinking, this is going to be fantastic. What's the
Yeah.
problem? It's going to be an adventure. And it was like, oh, wow. And so from that moment on, I was drinking all day. So I
Right.
would wake up in the morning, and I remember I used to make myself a cup of coffee. It was half coffee and half whatever I could filch out the drinks cabinet to
Really?
start the day. Yeah.
To start the day. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I remember speaking to my other sister about this and saying, I'm getting a bit worried because I'm drinking all day, every day. And she said, don't worry about it. You've told me it's dry in Iraq because, Muslim country, the British soldiers weren't allowed any drinks out there. She's like, don't worry about it. Do what you need to do now to get through these next few weeks. And then when you're out there, you're not going to be drinking anyway. So you'll be fine.
Mm.
So, and of course, that makes sense on one level until, 20 years down the line, I realized that's not how it works. When you reach a certain level, you can't backtrack.
You can't. You
No.
can't. And not only that, if you're drinking from when you're opening your eyes and you're drinking during the day, to stop like that is pretty dangerous as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, so I'm in my. Oh, in fact, it was late because I hit my 30th birthday when I was out there. So I'm in my late 20s. So yeah, it probably wasn't the most sensible thing to do. But then drinking in the morning
Exactly. That's
of
not
its
either,
own
is it?
is
No.
no,
And
no, no.
well,
Yeah.
you've just reminded me again that when I hit my rock bottom and I had my last drink, I was 28 years old, but I didn't
Okay.
know. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
and I didn't know that to stop drinking after you're drinking probably 12, 14 hours a day every day for the last I don't know how long, to stop instantly was dangerous. And I
yeah.
shook and in my brother's bed. I was in his spare room and I was shaking. I don't know.
Jeez.
I'd say it was a week, but I think it was 4 or 5 days. And then when I got to
God.
see the doctor, because it took a week to get to see the doctor, he said to me, "Oh, you shouldn't have done that." He said, "Because you could have died." I said, "Mate, it's took me a week to get in to see you." But
Yeah, yeah.
by
That's the
that
problem.
point, yeah, it is. And
Yeah.
I got over it after that point. And the DTS or whatever they're called, I'm not too sure. They'd passed, but I do know that sometimes they don't pass, and sometimes they can. You can have fits and heart attacks and all sorts, can't you? Which I wasn't
Yeah,
aware of.
yeah. Hallucinations and everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
100%.
Absolutely. Yeah,
But you didn't
yeah.
suffer that, so you just stopped and then you went.
So yeah, so to put this in context, so I wasn't drinking for months solid. So I'd have like, I don't know, a week off army training. So I'd be drinking for a week, and then I'd go back to whatever base to do. So so it wasn't like I'd been drinking for 2 months straight. I'd had odds and sods here and there of drinking constantly for this week, and then not drinking because I was on doing the training on this period. So I was kind of like on and off a bit. But no, that was how it worked. I mean, yeah,
And then you was in Iraq, you was there, you didn't drink because you couldn't drink.
yeah.
So then you come back after 6 months. How does your life look then?
So when you come back, you have 2 months decompression leave. So you're still on army time, but you
Right.
just do what you like with it. So you're not released back to. So what they basically do is almost like maternity leave. The army take you, and your job has to keep your job open until you come back. But as far as your job's concerned, it was 10 months because it was 2 months build up training and 2 months decompression leave at the end.
Gotcha.
So I basically drank every day for the 2 months after I got back.
Every
And
day.
yeah, because again, to put it into context, you're back. It's over. I'm safe. I didn't die. Massively good. All your friends want to meet up with you and welcome you back. You've got all your money because they match your civilian wage. So when you're in the territorial army, when they mobilise you, they match whatever your civilian wage is. But
Right.
of course, you're not paying rent. You're not paying food. You're not paying bills. Nothing. So you've got a load of money in the bank. You've got 2 months, no work, no
You're
nothing.
drinking. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
drinking.
yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
was that
Yeah.
was that the same process? You wake up in the morning, you make your coffee, and you put anything else in, or
No, no, it wasn't. I wasn't doing that at that point. I was I'm trying to think about this. Yeah, I think on the whole, I wasn't morning drinking at that point.
Okay,
I would wake up. I was actually doing stuff as well. So I went on a walking holiday with my dad, for example. So we
right.
get up, we cover about 10 miles in the morning, and then sit in the pub in the afternoon into the evening. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it was kind of a bit more like that.
A bit more
Um,
civilized
yeah, yeah, yeah.
than the coffee and what is in the cupboard. Someone said to me the other day that they didn't morning drink because they didn't get up till 12 o'clock.
Oh, right.
And I
Yeah,
said, yeah, that's.
yeah,
Um,
geez.
so, did you then go back into the field of being a solicitor? Is that what you did?
Yeah, yeah. So I went back into that. So this is the interesting thing as well here. So I went back into my normal office, but they were closing the office down and they were making everyone redundant. So I went back. They'd already transferred the work, but they still made everyone come into the office. So literally, I was going into the office. I think it was 3 months, and I had no work to do. So what I used to do, obviously, again, this is back in the sort of 2000s. So you didn't have like smartphones that you have now. I bought myself a DVD player, a load
Right.
of DVDs, and I'd sit at my desk, bring a load of cans in with me, and sit there drinking and watching films. I was like, fine, if you want me in the office, that's what I'll do. So I did that, which looking back on it, it was kind of useful because it kind of, I know it sounds odd, but it got me up in the morning, have a shave, put a suit on, go to an office, but don't have
Yeah.
to do any work.
Yeah.
So
And you did that for a few months.
yeah, that was about 3 months, and then I started like a proper job after that.
Right.
So
Gotcha.
again, I transitioned into the city. So I was working as a solicitor, but in the insurance industry, which is where I've been ever since.
So, was it your physical or mental health that got you to the point where you thought enough's enough?
To stop drinking. So to stop drinking, fast forward now. So this is 2006. I'd already met my now wife. So I was
Right.
dating her. Um, I came back from Iraq, proposed to her. We got married in 2008. 2000, yeah, 2008. I think we got married, and we had during all of this process, I'm drinking a lot at weekends. When I'm drinking at weekends, because this is the other thing I used to find, I would wake up in the night unable to sleep, like really bad
Yeah,
insomnia, my heart going really fast. And what I found is a couple of drinks would get me back to sleep.
that's true.
So weekend would come, I'd drink a load on the Friday, I'd wake up in the early hours of sort of Saturday morning, have a couple of drinks to get back to sleep. But the problem when you're doing that, and don't forget I'd already spent long periods of drinking in the morning, I was very easily falling back into the habit of waking up on a Saturday drinking. So my drinking habits at this point are Friday drink, fall asleep, wake up, drink, fall, and just through this process. And and it's not a stable process because if everything's going fine, you can just about pull yourself together on a Sunday and get back to work on a Monday. But it doesn't take much, a bit of an argument or a bill you can't pay or something, and you hit it hard, and then you're waking up on Monday thinking, I can't go into work, I'm in a mess.
Hmm.
So you ring in sick, but then you're sat at home on your own, nothing to do apart from drink
Drink.
again.
Yeah.
And it escalated over the next few years to, it was 2014 I stopped drinking.
Right.
So this is kind of escalating up. We
And
then
is
have
that
children.
behaviour at the weekends, rolling into the Monday, phoning in sick, that continued throughout that period?
Yeah, I wasn't ringing in sick all the time. So
But
this is the thing. If
here
it
and
was
there.
going okay, yeah, yeah. And so one of the things that happened to me shortly after I got back, and this was, when I was in the city, sort of having a proper job, I was in work one day, and I got a phone call from a friend of mine I'd been out in Iraq with to say one of my friends from out there had just killed himself.
Right.
And I was like, wow, obviously it's a shock. You kind of
Yeah.
one moment you're sat there like 10 in the morning just tapping away, and suddenly you're like, oh fuck. And
Yeah.
I remember just sitting there, and I sent my secretary. I didn't even want to talk to anyone. I just sent my secretary an email saying, I've just heard a friend of mine I was in Iraq with has killed himself. I'm gonna have to leave for the day. And I went out the office. It was over kind of like near Liverpool Street, and I was just walking, and then I just started drinking, and I
Right.
basically drank the whole day away. And I woke up the next morning. I knew I had to go into work. I got up, shaved, put my suit on, and I was walking in, and I thought, I can't do this without a drink. So again, I stopped at the off license on the way in and bought a can of cider, some kind of strong
Right.
cider, and was sat on the train commuting into town, drinking this can
Wow.
of cider in my suit. And I was just suddenly like burst into tears. It was like, fuck, I can't take this. It was like horrible. I mean, when I
Uh,
got into the office, I can't even remember what the day was like. I assume I used to, because when it was bad like that as well, I used to nip out regularly and have a drink
and
somewhere,
have a
because there's a
drink.
Weatherspoons near. But there's loads of Weatherspoons in London, and they open at 8 a.m.
Yeah, yeah.
so you can always pop out and grab a drink. So I think I just limped from one drink to the next through the day, until I got home. So, but anyway, so this is so I'm sort of hopefully drinking just at weekends and going
Hmm.
into work Monday, but it's a very unstable situation. And then 2011, my first son is born, and 2013, my second son's born, and
Right.
that escalated things massively, because I don't know if you've got kids. Oh,
I had, yeah.
yeah, you have, yeah.
Yeah.
So I found it scary. It's like
Mhm.
suddenly like there's this thing and you can't get away.
It's
Even
hard.
like if you have a bad day at work, you're going home at some point.
Yep.
But this is not something you can get away with. And it was, yeah. And then of course, like my wife's, how can I say this without being horribly sexist, but different women experience different parts of pregnancy and are not always the most rational. So
Yeah.
our arguments just, and don't get me wrong, I'm not blaming her for it, because obviously I'm drinking, so I've
Mhm.
got the emotional stability of a child anyway, because that's
Yeah.
what you have when you're drinking.
And how
So
you react is differently to what you would do if you were sober minded.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're argumentative, you're bitter, you're unhappy, all the rest of it. So our arguments go up, but then of course that makes you increasingly unhappy. So you're hitting the drink more and more and more. So it went completely off the scales at that point.
What? Okay. Why do you think you drunk like you drunk? What do you think the reason for that was?
So my take on it, and I don't know, not everyone necessarily agrees with this. My take on it was, when I started drinking, I drank as much as I could. So I was drinking a lot. So you're waking up the next day feeling rubbish, and you're having another drink in that situation. So what I learned afterwards is alcohol, it's a sedative, it's a drug, it's a
Yeah.
depressant. It
Yep.
decreases or inhibits nerve activity.
Hmm.
So when you drink it, your brain tries to counter it. So your brain has a huge array of chemicals, drugs, and hormones that it creates and excretes itself, like adrenaline, cortisol, endorphins. These are all chemicals that the brain makes and excretes. Now, because what the brain does is it tries to work by way of something called homeostasis, which is a balance of all these chemicals, drugs, and hormones. And when this balance is in place, you generally feel okay. When you take alcohol, which is a sedative, your brain tries to counter it. It does it in lots and lots of different ways. It releases things like adrenaline and cortisol, which is a stress hormone, to try and counter the sedating effects of the alcohol. So when the alcohol wears off, you've got this anxiety, this unpleasant feeling. Now, there's lots of reasons why people have an unpleasant feeling. Most of the time, you just get on with it. You might have an argument with your partner or a bill you can't pay or whatever it is. And most of the time, you just get on with it because you have to. But over time, your subconscious works out that this particular unpleasant feeling can be relieved by another drink. Because the reason you feel rubbish is because your brain's geared up to work under the sedating effects of the alcohol, but there's no alcohol. So the quickest way to feel better is to take another drink. So when you're drinking heavily on consecutive sessions, you very quickly, your brain makes that link. And then what happens when it's made that link is every time a drink wears off, it creates the need for the next one.
Hmm.
So you've got that constant need to
Cycle.
keep
Yeah.
drinking. Yeah, exactly. And of
But
course, the other thing was, it was stress relief for me. So this is
right.
what I quite often say to people when they're going to stop drinking. Life has its ups and downs. Okay, life is a lot better when you stop drinking, but it still has its ups and downs. Now the problem is, because alcohol is a sedative, we use it to sedate, to anesthetize. So if you feel bad, you naturally reach for a drink. Now when you stop drinking, you're still going to have bad days, but you need to choose how you're going to deal with them, because it's not good to say, right, stop drinking and suddenly you have a really shit day. And it's like, oh, I'll just have a drink to get, oh, I can't anymore. And you're kind of stymied. You need to know what you're going to do. So I think it was a number of things. It was the drinking heavily, but also, and I suppose this is cultural as much as anything, being taught from all, you said it yourself, this culture. Oh, you're
Yeah.
stressed, have a drink. That gets
Yeah.
rid of it.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, really, isn't it? Because I was reading something the other day, and it's like if you don't drink, people think there's something wrong with you. That's
Yeah,
that's how society
mad, isn't
looks
it?
at it. What, you don't drink? You're
Yeah,
like, well, just have one, and it's like
yeah,
I'm quite open. If I'm in a social environment, I tell people the reasons why I don't drink, and I've got no issues with that. And I'm proud to say that
mm,
I am personally a recovered addict. I'm happy to tell people that because
yeah,
if I didn't admit that many years ago, I wouldn't be here now. So,
yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah,
but yeah, you look at that society and you think, I was reading again the other day. I think it was 80% of the population drink alcohol. I didn't know whether
yeah,
that's
yeah.
true or not
That's
true,
it.
but
Yeah, no, that's about right. Yeah,
is that
yeah.
about
I
right?
think it's the figure I heard was 87%. So
Really?
yeah, a lot
See
of
that?
people. Yeah,
See, now, would you class alcohol as a drug?
yeah, yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah,
So 87% of the population are taking a legal drug. That kills them, can kill them, that
yeah, yeah.
changes so much about their personality, changes, it becomes a family issue. You look at
Mm,
how you must have been with your wife in those
yeah,
times.
yeah, yeah.
It
And the
affects
kids as
everyone, doesn't
well.
it? And the
Yeah,
kids,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
87% of the population's doing it, and it's
yeah.
normal.
Yeah, yeah. It's the way we look at it, and it's the way it's perceived. Because, like, so if I'm in a room of people, right, and I'm not talking about people who are in recovery, just so-called normal people, and I say, hands up, who thinks a night out with friends is more fun if you've had a drink?
Yeah,
Everyone puts their hand up, right? But if
yeah,
you say to the same room of people, hands up, who is psychologically, if not physically, dependent on a drug to such an extent you're no longer able to fully enjoy life without it, no one will put their hand up. But it's the same question.
it is the same
If you need
question.
a drug to have a good time with your friends, you're, as I say, psychologically, if not physically, dependent on it.
Yeah, that's a good point. That really is a good point because that is exactly the same question, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It is.
absolutely. See, this is the thing. It's with alcohol. Because everyone drinks, how I see it is there's an acceptable level of
Yeah.
dependence on it, and there's
Yes.
an unacceptable. So if I say I don't enjoy myself without having a few drinks on a social occasion, that's absolutely fine. But if I say I can't get up in the morning without having a drink, that's not
That's
fine,
not fine. No,
and
that's not fine.
it's arbitrary. And
Yeah.
I get it's not entirely arbitrary, because obviously the more you drink, the more harm you're doing all over.
Yeah.
But it's not, it's just levels of dependence. And I say it needn't be physical, but it's certainly psychological. If the amount of people, for example, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he was saying about, I'm going out, oh, well, it's going to cost me like 50 quid in a taxi just to get there. So, well, you could drive, but then you can't drink.
Yeah.
So that's the level of dependence. I would
Yeah.
rather spend an additional 50 quid on top of all the other expenses, because I know I'm not going to enjoy myself out without a drink.
No, it's very true. And you know what? The reason why I laugh is because I remember certain conversations with certain people over the years, and they're all similar to that. It's
Yeah.
like people don't realise that, like you say, there is levels. So when you're functioning as a human being and mentally you're not battered, there's no need to analyze it, is there? There's no need to look.
No.
Unless something
Yeah.
drastic happened in your life and it was a situation, you might need to look at it. And I think for me, that's what, you know, the first part of my life was like. But then I was like you, I would drink in those mornings like that.
Mm.
I would be that person who's on the train in their suit. Because and do you know what? At one point, I didn't give a fuck if anyone had an opinion on it. But then when it got later on in my drinking, I, the anxiety was so much. I didn't want people to see it. It
Yeah, yeah,
was a
yeah.
shame. I think.
The goalposts do change with it as well, because when you're young, going out getting hammered is like, oh, that's great. That's something to be, that's something really laudable. But do it in your like 40s, and it's like, shouldn't be doing this. And it's like, well, and the strange thing is, with any drug, the natural course of it is to want more and more, not less and less. It's to,
That's
you know,
right.
it's to drink more and not less. So, you know, if you're drinking to get drunk in your teens, it's only going to get worse as you hit your late 20s, 30s, 40s.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm just thinking back to what you said to me about, and you asked if I got kids, and you think having children was a catalyst to it. So having children's a bloody godsend for you then, because it brought you to that point where a decision had to be made.
Yeah, absolutely. So I heard this thing the other day about like the problems with the mediocre, and it was like how it was described to me. Imagine you say to yourself, "I don't want to keep destroying the environment, so
Yeah,
any journey up to 2 miles, I'm going to walk." But
yeah,
anything over 2 miles, I'll allow myself to drive. You got this weird thing where, you know, going 1.9 miles is going to take you an awful lot longer than going 2.1 miles. And it's like, for a lot of people, it's the line of least resistance. It's like, this might not be right, but it's unbearable. And, you know, a lot of people, like, for example, if you're in a relationship,
mhm,
if it's in a really bad relationship, that's better than being in a not so bad relationship, because at least if it's really bad, you're probably going to be galvanized to leave and do something about it. But if it's kind of the same as a job as well, if it's like, oh, I don't really like it, but it's not that bad, you just suffer it for years and years and years.
yeah.
So for me, I think the mix of the military and having children made it worse. But for me, that was a good thing,
Good
because, as
thing.
you say, it got to the point where it's like, right, I have to stop this.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like you don't realise at the time, but our class M is like is a gift because you know no one knows what would have happened to you without you having children, for example. Because and if your relationship hadn't have carried on, you don't know where you would have been because those factors were part of bringing you to that that important decision in your life.
Yeah. It could have ended differently. And like I said, my wife is someone who only ever has one or two, which
Mm,
is unusual because I wasn't that person. And for most of the time I was dating, the girls I was seeing were girls who were drinking like I was.
yeah.
We would go out to the pub and get hammered. If I'd have ended up marrying someone like that, I would never have stopped, probably, because you know, if you're drinking, no matter how much you're drinking, if someone's drinking the same or similar to you, it kind of normalizes it and
Well, it's
allows you to bury
acceptable,
your
isn't it?
head in the sand. Yeah, yeah. And you just keep
Yeah,
doing it. So it
yeah.
was this kind of different events and different circumstances that all kind of melded together. But do you know what? I'm kind of grateful for it, because, you know, a lot of people look back to their so called normal drinking and think, oh, I wish I could go back to it. But I don't, because uh, having stopped, when I stopped drinking, my mindset was, I cannot keep doing this. I have to stop. It's destroying me. It's destroying the family. It's destroying everything. I just can't do it anymore. But I'm never going to enjoy going on holiday, because I like drinking on holiday, and I can't imagine going on holiday not drinking. I'm not going to enjoy Christmas. I'm not
Yeah.
going to enjoy social occasions, because the only thing I enjoy about social occasions is the drinking. So I've got to stop doing this, but it's going to mean a complete nosedive for like my personal happiness. And it was the opposite.
It was the
Of
opposite, yeah.
course, yeah, what a ridiculous thing to think you need a sedative in order to enjoy different parts of your life. And when I came out the other side, it was like, wow, this is not what I expected sobriety to be. It's like
No.
massively positive. And I even look back on what I would term my normal drinking years, and I kind of, I wouldn't want to go back to that either.
No, you wouldn't want them. Well, and why would you want them? Because you've got a life now that's completely different, and you know there was something, there was a substance in your life that you was dependent upon, and when you've got that dependency on something, you're not free, are you?
No, no, no. It takes up so much headspace. The thing I used to hate about it as well, having been at the military and done like quite a lot of running, a lot of exercise, really knackered yourself out, you feel good after it. The best I ever feel, right? And I won't say what everyone else feels. I'll just tell you the best I've ever felt in my life is when you've got a really good night's sleep and
Mm.
you've gone and done some exercise and really knackered yourself out, and you feel good. You feel
Yeah.
awake, alive, happy, positive, resilient. And when I was drinking, I was tired,
Mhm.
lethargic. And this is while I'm drinking. This is, you know, in the middle of my drinking session. You know, people have this image of like when you're drinking, you're laughing, you're happy, you're
No.
having a great time. That might be 5% of it. Most of the time, you're just slumped in front of the sofa, half asleep, watching whatever craps on TV, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's not.
That's a lovely
It's not.
way to live, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And it's just I look back on it now and I kind of wonder how much, how I wasted so much time and didn't see the bigger picture.
Yeah. Days go into weeks, into months, into years, and it's very
Mm.
quick. It just flies past, doesn't it? And
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
so how did you stop? So when that decision come, did you try any fellowships? What did you do?
So I went to AA and I think I started going to an AA meeting in town, which I found the companionship really useful, sitting down with a human being and saying, I drink in the morning, I drink this, and then just going, yeah, that's what I did. Was like, because people don't talk about it. If they do
Yeah,
do it, they don't talk about it. It's all very hush hush, and most people don't anyway. So that was really powerful. I found it, I couldn't quite get to grips with the program. And I don't mind doing stuff if I can see a reason for it or if it seems to help. And it didn't particularly. I didn't find stopping through AA and working the steps to be particularly easier than just doing it on my own and just sort of gritting my teeth and getting on with. Not to say, it works for some people, which is great. If it works, it works. But it just wasn't really for me. And I also found the meetings could be pretty hit and miss. So there were
yeah,
some meetings. There was one up the road from me in Ealing that was really good. It was really positive, and at the end of it, there was this old chap there. He used to make everyone jump up and down for joy. This is what he said: "Jump for joy that you've given up drinking." So it's like really. It sounds a bit stupid, but it was nice because it made it like positive.
yeah, yeah.
Whereas there were other meetings where it was almost. I remember sat down and one person sharing for ages, saying, you should be working the steps. You should, and it was almost like you felt like you were being, it was quite almost like aggressive. So but that was all I did. So when I finally stopped, I'd been out for like a lunch, business lunch, on like I think it was a Tuesday. I'd had a few drinks then. I'd then drunk into the evening. I'd woken up the next day and drunk. I'd rung in sick from work and drunk. I don't really remember much about it. I came to 4 or 5 days later,
Right.
completely in bits. My wife had left. The kids were gone. I
Oh,
hadn't been
gone.
into work. Yeah, and I was just, and so that was like my
Right.
rock bottom, and it was
That was
like,
your rob arm. Yeah.
yeah, that was like this is it now.
So you just stopped.
Yeah, I did similar to you, although 10 years. I mean, you did very well stepping at 28. That's great because you've
Yeah. Right.
wasted less of your life. That's fantastic. I was, I think, 38. So I was 10 years on
Okay.
from when you stopped, but still young enough. Like I say, I'm coming up to a
Yeah.
decade this February, and
Yes.
it's mad. It's just, I
Yeah,
can't.
and listen, that's a big congratulations because you know what? It's not easy. I don't believe it's easy. If you're
No.
drinking like you was drinking, yeah, if you're pouring drinks in the morning with your coffee, or you're getting on the train with a can of cider, or you're taking Strongbows out of the fridge, to
Yeah.
stop and then have 10 years. Listen, I'll take my hat off to you because that's a big achievement. However you've done it, whether you've done it in a fellowship, whether you've done it, you know, from a thought that's come into your mind or read a book or whatever it is, it's a big achievement. So congratulations on that
Thank
achievement.
you. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, and congratulations on yours. How long have you been
Think
sober now? Then.
I was 19 years on Friday, just gone.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
man. Yeah,
Amazing.
that is
Well
amazing.
done. Yeah,
But you know
yeah.
what? I'll be honest with you. I do share this that I was 28 years old, but I was mentally fucked. The
Oh, I
last three
bet. Yeah,
months,
yeah.
I used to lay in bed with a gun in my mouth every night,
Oh
praying
God.
to God
Yeah,
to
yeah.
give me the strength to pull the trigger. And I share this a lot. He gave me the strength to ask for help, and then my life it changed. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, 28. I think I had another 2-3 months left in me, and I probably wouldn't have been here. So
Yeah, yeah. No, 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 no. Jeez.
it's mad, isn't it?
It takes it takes such this is again something I didn't appreciate. It takes such a massive toll on your mental health.
Yeah, it does.
It just destroys it because this is what a lot of people don't realize. It stops you sleeping. When you
Yeah,
drink alcohol, you fall unconscious. You do not sleep. You
you do
don't
not
go
sleep.
through
No,
sleep cycles. So
it's like a blackout, isn't it? You go to bed and
yeah,
it's like a blackout. It's an
yeah,
unconscious
yeah.
blackout. Yeah,
To wake up healthy and feeling good, you need to go through certain sleep cycles, and alcohol just anesthetizes you into unconsciousness. It doesn't let you go through those sleep cycles. And, sleep deprivation is a form of torture.
it
When you're
is.
drinking regularly, you're putting yourself through that. And of course, you just need to know the effect it has on your mental health. And that's why you get to that real low stage because your brain is just incapable of sleep. and then you're throwing all this chemical imbalance in on top of it. It's just horrendous.
It is horrendous. It is horrendous. Don't get me on the topic of it being advertised all around the world and over the telly and everything else. A substance that can do that to you, because I've
Yeah.
got many opinions on that. But listen, I want to finish up on a topic about your book. I want to know, how did you write your book? Where did the knowledge come from? Was it all from your head? Did you research? And how? I'm aspiring to be an author myself, so this is why I want to know this personally. I'm halfway through like a autobiography, but with a recovery element in it as well. And
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm interested to know.
My book, so there's no real autobiography in my book. It was more, so for me, what I needed was less of the personal story, and I wanted to know the mechanics. That's what I wanted to know. Is like, right, how why am I drinking like this? Why can I not have one or two? Why can he have one or two and I can't have one or two? What's the difference between us? What's going on, psychologically, physically, physiologically, whatever it is. So I wanted to get all that. A lot of it was a mix between noticing what was happening to me and then kind of like a bit of basic science, which I researched. So,
Okay.
like I spoke about it before. So, like the brain chemistry thing, where your brain
Yeah.
tries to keep that balance of chemicals, and then kind of just really putting two and two together. So it's like, okay, so my brain is trying to maintain this chemical balance. I'm throwing down a load of sedative, and I wake up
Mhm.
the next day at 4 a.m, really anxious and unable to sleep. So
And you're
that's
doing it
the
again.
answer. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, again, again, I wasn't. Like I said at the beginning, I was never particularly sociable. So when I was drinking, and I think when you're drinking at that level as well, you don't want to be with other people. You just want to drink
No,
on your own
you
because
do.
you're hammered, and having to try and pretend to be sober is not useful. So I spent an awful lot of time just slumped on the sofa at home drinking, but thinking about why am I doing this? How do I feel? What is it that's pulling me in? So I was kind of like just picking it to pieces while I was doing it, really. So it was kind of like a mix between some real basic science and a lot of my own experience.
Experiences.
And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
So when did you write it? When did you write the book?
Not it. So funny enough, I had a conversation about this the other day. It was published in, I think, April 15,
Oh,
and
wow.
I quit in 14
14. Yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah,
February.
yeah.
So it wasn't long after. It was just
Jeez.
14 months after I quit. But see, this is the thing I was talking about again, because I was talking about this the other day. What some people, they drink and then they hit a point where they want to stop and they go through like a recovery process, or cure whatever you want to term it, that
Yeah.
sobering up process, mentally, physically, all the rest of it. I think I didn't do that. I think there was a point quite early on where I thought to myself, something isn't right here. Why am I doing this? How is it affected? So the process I've just described of like analyzing it happened way before I stopped drinking. So
Right.
actually, I think when I got to the point of stopping drinking, it's almost like, say, if you go to AA and work the program while you're still drinking.
Yeah, yeah,
Which
yeah.
sounds odd, but you're kind of doing the background work that you need in order to quit before you've actually quit. And I think
You're
that's what I was
building
doing.
some
I wanted
knowledge,
to,
aren't you?
yeah, exactly. So when I came to stop, I had a lot of this information in place, which is what allowed me to stop, I think. Because, I mean, when you stop and you're drinking at that level, you feel really, really bad,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
But I knew because of that chemical imbalance, it would eventually correct itself. So I was like, I don't feel good, but I'm going to feel better soon. I knew I'd start sleeping better and I'd start to feel better all round. It was that knowledge that allowed me to do it. So the book was kind of, yeah, it was a very short time period after I quit, really, because it was just over a year. But I think the information had been sort of fermenting away back there for a long time.
Do you think writing the book as well and getting it published was like a big positive thing? Like you've just put down the drink, so you've got something in your life that's positive, that this, to keep you focused on something.
Yeah, funnily enough, it didn't feel like that at the time because I wanted to write it, but I had young kids, I had a stressful job, all of this, I just didn't have time to. It was really hard trying to find the time to do it, but it was really useful for me because for me, what allowed me to stop was a quite a deep understanding of how it all fitted together. Um, And I think for me, writing the book deepened that knowledge, because you think you know something, but when you come to write it down, it was like, oh, hold on, this doesn't make sense, and there's a gap here, and I haven't joined these dots. So it deepened my understanding. So I think it like solidified my
Yeah.
sobriety to a large degree, because for me, it was, as I say, the knowledge and understanding I needed in order to stop. And I was strengthening that in writing the book. So it was almost like a part of the stopping process for me, was writing the book.
It sounds that way. It sounds that way, and that's
Mm.
part of, and maybe call it as part of your recovery. I don't know, but
Yeah, absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
definitely a journey, isn't it?
Yeah,
Have you
yeah.
had some positive feedback? Have you had like from people who have read the book who it's helped and now they don't drink?
Yeah, yeah, lots. And I mean,
Wicked.
when you write a book, you kind of hope for the best, but expect the worst. You know, prepare for the
Yeah.
worst. It's and it, yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I still look at the like the reviews on Amazon now. I mean, they're all on there for people to have a
Yeah.
look at. But yeah, it's a feeling like no other when someone says I've stopped and it was because of this book, and it was like it, it's good, because I remember sitting there writing it, and it's not always easy, and it's like it kind of makes everything worthwhile then, because it's a awesome feeling. Yeah.
Listen, that feeling there, for one person to say that they've bought your book, read your book, and they've stopped and changed your life, one's enough. You getting multiple people saying that,
Yeah.
that gives you goosebumps, doesn't it? That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah, it does. It's amazing. It's yeah, I can't. Yeah, it's hard to describe it really, but yeah, it's
So, is
amazing.
there a second book?
Yeah, so what happened was I wrote the first book, and it's self-published on Amazon.
Okay.
So and what you can do is it's quite easy. You just literally upload a Word document. So when I first wrote the book, I started a website and I started writing blog posts. And so I've written the book. I've been exploring all the different aspects of drinking and sobriety and all the whys and wherefores and all the rest of it. And then I keep doing this, and it's particularly because then I'm having people contacting me about the book, and I'm getting more feedback from different people. So I'm writing blog posts, and if I wrote something that I thought was important, I'd put it in the book and re-upload the book and do like a different edition of it.
Right.
But then a few people said I'd really like to have it on Audible so you can listen to it. So I got someone to paid an actor to narrate it. But the problem with that is you can't update it because it's kind of set in stone. So I thought to myself, it's fine. What I'll do, I'll keep doing my blog posts, keep exploring things. And when I get a load of them, I'll just do a major overhaul, do a second edition of Alcohol Explained, and then get it redone. But when I went to do that, there was like another book. It was too long. So that
Oh,
sort of became Alcohol Explained 2. So there's two
right.
books now. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that, to me, enhances your sobriety on a daily basis doing that, doesn't it? It's
Yeah, it
got
really
to.
does. Yeah.
Every day. Yeah.
Yeah. The blog posts have got less and less now, but there's still, even now, like all these years down the line, I'm still thinking of new stuff that is like, oh, okay. And I still like always go back every now and then and do another blog post and kind of,
Yeah. Yeah.
they're short, like 800, 900 words, just like exploring a particular topic or thought or something and just picking it to pieces as I do.
And William, you do a lot of this as well, don't you? You do a lot of podcasts. I've seen you on a few podcasts. That's
Yeah,
how
yeah,
we've
I
been
get,
enjoying
yeah,
it. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. 'Cause we get more and more people. Podcasts are the big thing these days. So I get like
They
invites
are.
to do podcasts, and it's really nice doing them, like talking to people and finding out their story, and
Yep.
yeah, really
And it's
good.
helping others, isn't it? It's helping others because, the way I look at this podcast, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to start it, is because if you've got people sitting at home, not knowing where to go, not knowing how to ask for help, and if they can, I don't know, if they're Googling it and it comes up on YouTube or wherever it comes up, and they can listen to your story, for me asking you questions, getting some identification, they might go, do you know what? I need to do what he did.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it could save a life. That's the reality.
yeah. That's the thing. So for me, the thing that stopped me stopping for so long was a very deeply held belief that I wouldn't enjoy my life as much without
Yeah,
it. That
yeah.
I needed it to socialize, holidays, all the rest of it, and it can be incredibly hard when you're in that space to think, well, how can I enjoy a social occasion without it? But you just have to trust that it's there. It's a drug. It's like so many people, like I used to smoke, and I remember sitting there smoking, thinking I could never give up smoking. I could never imagine doing X, Y, and Z without a cigarette. And like years down the line, you look back on it and think, God, what a weird state of mind to be in. And it might seem utterly impossible, but I absolutely promise people it's the same with drinking. When you give it up, when you get it into your past, and you start to do things right, you look back on it and think, what a weird way to have wasted 20 years or 30 years or
Yeah,
whatever.
100%. And you have kind of answered my last question for you, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So,
Okay.
if you've got one piece of advice for our listeners or our viewers to finish up on, what would it be?
So yeah, I think you just kind of said it, but I would emphasise as well. I've talked very briefly about what alcohol does to us. Don't enter into this thing, because this is the normal thing, and we all do this when we realise we've got a problem. We think there's something wrong with us. You need to remember it's an addictive drug, and if you take enough of it, you get addictive. You get addicted to it. It's not you; it's the drug, and the problem is you've been taking it too long. And that's what I would say. And I would say to people to get curious about it, because there are answers then out there now that we didn't have 10, 15 years ago about why you keep wanting it. And like I said before, why can he or she have one or two and I can't? It's all to do with the physiology and the chemistry and all of that. It's all
All
there.
of that. Yeah, and it's basic. And I think reading between the lines, what you said then is don't be ashamed, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, do not be ashamed of it. It's like, you know, the reason I drank too much is because I was a heavy drinker anyway, and then the things we've talked about, my military training, going out into Iraq, parenthood, all the rest of it, tipped it over the edge. Some people, like I say, they might not have had that, and it wouldn't have tipped them over the edge. It's the circumstances. It's nothing wrong with you. It's an alcocentric society that's encouraging you to reach for a drink every time you have something tough, and an amalgamation of probably quite bad times, and it gets out of hand.
Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure listening to you.
No, I've really enjoyed it, Stu. Thank you. It's really nice to talk to you.
It's
Yeah,
been lovely to meet you as well. I've really enjoyed it. I've genuinely
thank
really
you.
enjoyed it. Thanks for coming on.